Hooray, I am live. Hey, everybody, welcome to Being Becca Live. It is I, Becca Lori Hector, here, where we talk about the challenges of being an autistic adult that's alive right now and not when research catches up. Okay, so here we are today, and as usual, Becca had a topic in the calendar. I had a note to myself about what I wanted to talk about and all that fun stuff, right? And then, of course, life interrupted. And when it did, it was another learning opportunity for me. It was another opportunity to say, this is something that I need to understand about myself. So that experience, of course, took over and is now going to be the topic of our of our live stream today. Before I get started, though, I want to remind you guys that today, as in 2 hours from right now, I will be doing the October seminar series for this month. I will be doing time and spoon management at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's in 2 hours. So you have 2 more hours to register if you'd like to. You can head on over to beccalori.com, and that's LORY.com. Go over to the Self-Defined Living Seminar Series tab and scroll on down that page till you get to the newest one, which is the one for October, and that is time and spoon management. So hopefully I'll see some more of you there this afternoon. Fear not, though, if you are watching this and it's already passed, the recording will be up for purchase. So if it's something that you need to work on, please still follow the instructions and head over there, because as soon as I can make it available, I will put the recording up. Hey, Morgan, how are you? I'm excited that probably a few of you that regularly actually watch the live streams are actually going to be in class today, which is exciting for me. And some people that I don't even know are going to be in the seminar. So I'm excited for that too, because it's a chance to teach new people. And I love that. Hey, Bill, I can't wait to have you guys there, because I actually had a lot of fun putting this one together, because it's like a really simple concept. And yet, because it's so, it's not tangible in the way that I could say, well, take this and move it here, right? It makes it interesting to create a visual of it so that maybe the information will stick. And so hopefully it's going to be a good one. I hope I do it well. And I hope to see you guys there. And with that, I'm going to move on to today's topic, because I think it's an interesting one. And it's the first time that I've used my dissociation as a skill set. What? Yes, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, about how we can consciously dissociate sometimes, and that in times of stress, that's a strength. Well, this was another one of those scenarios for me. And it's the first time since I've had that thought about it that I've actually been able to, I don't know, experiment. That's the word, to experiment with my own life and how it plays out in reality, right? Okay, so I'm going to just, cut to the chase and let you know what we're going to talk about today is silent meltdowns. And I want to talk about silent meltdowns because I had one this week. And these days, when I have something like that happen to me, I try to not only process it better in the moment, because I know that's where my power is, right? My power is in the present. But at the same time, also do some post-processing, because what can I learn from the setup? What can I learn about the scenario that is something I really needed to learn, or I can walk away with the lesson? Because meltdowns, whether silent or loud, whether you're a child or an adult, are exhausting and upsetting and shameful and guilt-ridden and just in general really unpleasant experiences. And so the least that I could do with this horrible experience was kind of take note. And what could I teach myself about it? And what could I teach you guys about the whole setup scenario of it? And as you know, you guys, I usually, when I'm thinking about things, hey, Joe, when I'm thinking about things, I try to process them with you too. So some of what I'm going to say is the stuff that I'm processing kind of post the meltdown and that I've really started to reflect upon, right? So in the meltdown, so here, let me set up the whole scenario, right? Because I want people to understand where it comes from. Why do we get to a meltdown point? Why can't we do something about it? Why can't we then control our behavior while we're having a meltdown, right? And like what happens to us after, right? What happens after people are done looking at us, right? Okay. So I want to talk about those pieces, because as an adult, it's really different, right? Imagine if we allowed ourselves or weren't able to control in any way our meltdowns, right? And we looked like out in public having a meltdown, like the typical 3 or 4 year old meltdown that you see in the supermarket, right? Well, if you do that as an adult, we can tell you, right? You will be shamed for your behavior. You may be sent to a psychiatrist, any number of things, but you'll certainly be judged, right? And our children get judged for that behavior, but imagine how many folds of layers it is when we start looking at adults with that behavior, right? Of course, we are going to have things we want to control about it so that we don't get that judgment, right? First of all, because people don't understand them. And second of all, because when you don't understand something, you make judgment. And so maybe if we explain it a little bit, hopefully the judgment will pass. But that's not the point of this. The point of it is for us to understand the whole process of what's going on, right? So what I want people to know is that in adulthood, we still have meltdowns. Post-diagnosis, still meltdowns. Years and years with our own kind of dealing with it, still meltdowns, right? So like here I am 10 years out of diagnosis, still have meltdowns, right? So again, meltdowns, tantrums, not the same thing, right? Tantrums stop when you get what you want. Meltdowns are a roller coaster ride until they have expended their energy. Okay, it's a different concept. Okay. Meltdowns come from overload, and tantrums usually come from emotional dysregulation, right? It's a different place where their origin and where they're coming from. Okay, so let me set up the scenario for you guys. As you know, I've been sort of running low on spoons for the last month or so as I've been gathering myself to do the travel. And not to be surprised, I'm back from the travel. I feel much better because that stress is gone. But of course, my body and brain are still tired from the whole situation. So I've been sort of off since I've returned. And that's not surprising. None of you were surprised. I wasn't surprised. Antonio wasn't surprised. Not surprising. And we landed on a Sunday. We came home on a Sunday, and I had to, we landed on a Monday, and I had that whole week back. So it allowed me to kind of get back together with things and figure stuff out. But as you guys know, it was still a heavy pressure week for me because I did get that research in. I had that application due. And I got that in. And that was right after I came back. So it was like right into another deadline scenario, getting things done, high pressure scenario, all of that whole thing. So post all of that, right? This Monday passed 2 days ago. I went back to the vet's office. I've been gone for 2 weeks, and transition is hard. And working 1 day a week, you guys, it's fucking exhausting. Okay. Because here's the thing. I go from like having control over all of my time to all of a sudden being in a scenario where my time is not my own. Right. And I'm there to do a particular thing and that kind of stuff. I don't have control over my time and spoons in that way. Right. I don't have control over my environment. I don't have control over the way things are going to go down, who I'm going to be working with, who the clients are for that day. None of that stuff is in my control. Right. Whether it's hot or cold outside, all of that stuff. So that's, the setup scenario. So here I kind of made it through that hump, and that was so exciting. But man, was that an emotional drain, just getting that application in, right? So I'm heading back to work now, and I'm sort of in a depleted spoon state, right? And I'm also haven't been there in 2 weeks. And as we know with autism, the longer we stay away from doing certain activities, the harder it is to go back to doing them, and the more anxiety it brings with it. So here I am on the scenario going back to work. I already know, and I do it willingly. I know that the environment is one that is of sensory overload to me, and that by the end of the day, on the next day, I'm going to be exhausted, right? But there are other reasons why I do it. I enjoy it, right? And there are, of course, benefits for knowing my doctor that takes care of all of my animals, and liking the people that I work with, and having fun, like socially there, and all of that kind of thing. But after a day of it, I'm exhausted, right? So as the day goes on while I'm there, that's the same scenario I'm in as if I was back at school. Right? Can't control the environment, have to be there for a certain amount of hours, can't control when I eat, when I can get up, when I can look at my phone, right? All of that stuff that I have control over the rest of the week is gone on that day. On top of it, right, I have to do some masking and scenarios with my clients, sometimes with the people I work with, right? And then, of course, there's the social that goes on, good and bad social, right? It's still draining for us in that same way. and I'm on my feet the whole time, and I'm walking around the whole time, and the lights are bright the whole time, and it's hot most of the time, and I'm sweaty and I'm working, but I love the work, right? So it's sort of like I can't control these pieces. I know that part is part of doing this thing that I enjoy. And it's also why I can't do it full time, right? As we have seen in my past, right? So set up for the whole scenario, you can see I'm walking, right? Have I set it up clearly enough that all of you can see that I could have had a meltdown at any point, right? Do you see that I'm sort of in that place where I'm vulnerable to a meltdown, right? Vulnerable if repeated to a shutdown, and vulnerable if extended over a long period of time for burnout, right? Can you see the setup? Because I do, right? And so I know that though, but I'm aware of it. So there was an awareness that I was sort of walking into a set of like into a place where the floor is made of cut glass and I have no shoes on, right? That's the scenario I was walking into, and I knew it. So I knew it would be painful. I knew it would be draining. I knew there would be blood all over the place. Do you know what I mean? Like I knew it wasn't going to be an easy day for me, right? And that was the setup that I'm in. Right. So the other thing that I have as a component, I guess, and I don't know if it's part of my anxiety or part of my autism, but some combination thereof, I struggle when people watch me do shit. And I don't think I'm alone in that. In fact, we joke about it at the vet's office. If you're going to draw blood and stuff like that, that if someone's watching, you always miss. Right. And it's like that kind of thing. And I have it like in a really severe form. I feel like I can't even let Antonio, I live with Antonio. I can't have him watching me when I'm doing things, especially when I'm doing things with my hands because I have dyspraxia. Right. And then my own other vulnerability is numbers, right? Because of the dyscalculia. Right. The other thing that makes me intensely nervous about being is besides being watched by other people are people who for whatever reason, I get a vibe, right? And they just make me nervous. There's somebody who makes me nervous, whether it's someone who does things really well and I want to emulate, or someone who's unpredictable in their behavior for whatever reason. And that makes me uncomfortable, right? And so that kind of doubles and triples the scenario, right? What I see for myself in that scenario is inevitably that mistakes are going to happen. The thing is, I'm aware I'm going to make them, and I'm usually aware where I'm going to make them because I know my vulnerabilities, right? So that already the scenario is different because that's newish for me, right? I didn't have that my whole life growing up, that awareness of all of the triggers and the things that will set me up for these things to happen, right? But looking at it now, and especially hindsight when I had no control over it, right? When you're in it, it's a little harder to step out and look at it, right? But I had known that morning going in, I was setting, you know what I mean? I was up for it. I was ready, like I knew, right? Okay, so we're in there, blah, blah, blah. And inevitably, I make a mistake in front of somebody about something we just talked about, right? That we don't want to make those mistakes anymore. And I make the mistake, and it's in front of somebody who's been doing the job a long time, who's really confident human being as a person, right? And I'm like, oh my God, what? No wonder nobody wants to let you do anything. No wonder you can only do this one day. What is that? No wonder you can't make it through a day without making a mistake. No wonder you're always going to fail. What? Yes, that was the conversation, right? Do you see it happening? Right. And that is the beginning. Those words, that negative self-talk, that unconscious negative self-talk that is a boomerang response to this feeling of traumas being poked, right? And that's the beginning, is that self-critical, right? Not, do you know how many mistakes she's probably made in her life? Do you know how many mistakes he's probably made in his life, right? In his career, in his job here today, right? Everybody makes them, right? But immediately it's now everyone's going to know I'm autistic or whatever, or I'm the weird one, or I'm, I can't be trusted or whatever it is because I've made this human mistake, right? Because immediately the conversation in my head is, you are not good enough. Immediately, right? And why is that the thought? Because that's not how I allow myself to think the rest of the time. Why? Because I was already in a vulnerable state, right? I was already kind of beaten down in terms of the things that my brain knows how to do to protect itself, right? And so I went into robot format, and my brain went and did its own thing. And once that started, right, so began the silent meltdown. Sound changed, the things that I looked at changed. Literally, the capability for being able to feel like a person was sort of disappearing, right? And in this moment, and here's where the lesson is, right? I thought to myself, I feel like I'm beginning to dissociate. And in that moment, I said, I should dissociate. I should let myself dissociate because I couldn't leave the scenario, right? I could go to the bathroom briefly, but I couldn't really allow myself the time that I would need in the bathroom to calm myself down, right? And all of that stuff. And I wasn't in a scenario where I could do that. And that's often the case when we are at work and our time is not our own, right? So I can feel it beginning, and I can feel the dissociation beginning as the overstressed response, right? And I say to myself very consciously, I'm going to allow it to happen because I think it's the only thing that will save me right now. And I let that happen. And what happens to me then is that, I go deep into my own thoughts and my body kind of works on its own. It kind of is like on autopilot, right? And so I went about cleaning and folding laundry and all of those things. And I'm sure to my fellow employees and to the doctor, I looked like I was just fine, that nothing had happened. Nothing, right? Nobody had said anything, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, nothing. It all had occurred in here, right? But in that moment, I'm thinking they all know and blah, 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 right? And so as I begin to dissociate, those are the thoughts that I begin to be able to say to myself. Probably no one else is thinking about it. Let me just go ahead and be busy and continue to process through it. And as I did, I started to understand that all of those triggers that I explained to you had been set up, right? And I began to understand and see very clearly that, it was my response even to it, and the way my body felt was a habit response. And that's because I was feeling low, right? I was on low spoons and lots of things had already happened. I was almost halfway through the day. So I'd already had sensory overload for hours, right? I was already working with that and already had done a bunch of social and all kinds of other things. And had not yet had lunch. Okay. So that's the other component. My body wasn't even feeling well enough to fight it off, right? So it's almost inevitable that I had this silent meltdown. But here's the other piece when consciousness came in. So let me back up a second. So I did that conscious dissociation thing. And in that time, while I was, folding laundry and doing things and not working with patients so that I could kind of gather myself together, right? I was thinking about how be kind to yourself because, of course, look at your scenario. This meltdown was inevitable, just process through it. Let's figure out where it's coming from, and I was still thinking at the same time, those really negative thoughts, but trying to say to myself, these negative thoughts are coming from being beaten down. And so let's not give in to them. We have control over this, right? And I'm coaching myself through the whole thing in my head, how I would coach you through the whole thing, right? And I end up, I get a text from Antonio and we're talking about having to feed the dogs and running home to feed the dogs. And I end up telling him I'm like in the middle of a silent meltdown, right? Because that's what this is, you guys. It's a meltdown that is happening internally only, right? We're not having that external expression of the meltdown, but it is happening fully and totally internally. And so we call it a silent meltdown. I think we could call it an invisible meltdown if we wanted to, right? And that's sort of more common the older we get, the better we get at coping with the things that we have to deal with. We've sort of learned to internalize our meltdowns instead of letting out that energy, right? So we let ourselves implode instead of explode. That's the way I look at it. Right. And so that's why I think silent meltdowns are way more common in adulthood, because nobody judges you when you're having a silent meltdown. That doesn't mean the judgment is gone or the guilt is gone or the paralysis that happens with it is gone or the emotions, the guilt, the roller coaster, all of it is still there. It's just that nobody else is experiencing it with you, just you. Right? That's really the difference. So as that's occurring, I'm telling Antonio this and he's saying, okay, you'll be fine. And he says to me, why don't you go home? Because I'm like, lunch break is coming and I need to get in my car and go somewhere, like drive away from the office and go somewhere and sit in the shade and like eat my lunch, listen to a podcast or listen to music, cry if I have to, but I need to leave this space, right? That part was clear that was the way that I needed to handle it. And so he said, well, why don't you just drive home then and go let the dogs out? And at first I was like, oh no, I'm in the middle of a meltdown. How am I going to drive home? That's not really a smart thing to do. And then I won't be able to eat. And then I said to myself, you moron, if you are in the middle of a meltdown, there's no way you're eating right now anyway. Like you could sit here, but you're not going to eat. So I said to myself, he's right. And I went back and I said, you know what? You're right. I'm going to go and I'm going to drive home. And so that's what I did. I got in my car and I drove home and I let my dogs out and I sat on my porch for a minute and I kind of continued to process the meltdown, but I felt the need to dissociate, disappear. And as I was processing through it, I thought to myself, well, if I think about all of the trauma buttons that got pushed in a row for me, and then the start of being there with depleted spoons already, and all of these other layers of being nervous, of being watched, and sensory overload, and social, and all of these things on top of it, right? I should have seen the meltdown coming, and I kind of did, but I was really able to process through that. I also can prove now or say with confidence now that when we choose to consciously dissociate, it can be a strength, right? It got me through enough, right? And I used it as a tool and it got me through enough of the meltdown to be able to get to the space where I could be alone and do the things I needed to do to calm down and regroup and all of that stuff. So by the time I got back from the support system of my pets and sitting outside and having some fresh air and no input for a few minutes, right? And all of that stuff, I was able to gather myself back up and get back to the office. And luckily I had enough time left when I got back there to eat something, because now that I had processed the meltdown, I could eat again. I could feel that I was hungry again, right? Now, of course, I have to make it through the rest of the day and I'm exhausted, because there is nothing that exhausts us more than a meltdown, because we're just pushed past our empty bucket, right? Like someone's digging through our empty well to try and find more water and there is nothing there, right? But I have to make it through the day and I have to figure out how to do that. So I eat and I take care of my body and I do bathrooming and I do stuff like that. And then I say to myself, you just need to focus and you're going to get through these few hours because you've processed this meltdown. And I knew I was vulnerable. So I said to myself, I'm going to do my best to limit, right, my social interactions, things like that. And I'm going to stay busy with my hands on my body. And I'm going to answer the phone and stay engaged and stay in the moment. And that is how I am going to get through the rest of the day, just moment to moment to moment. And that's what I did. And I made it through and I got home. And to say I had no spoons when I got home is like a joke. Like I could barely feed myself when I got home, right? But there were lessons in all of this. There were lessons in reminding myself that my triggers are my triggers for life, that when I'm low on spoons, I'm susceptible just like everybody. I am not a super fucking hero. I am just me, right? And that I can learn to use the skill sets that trauma has given me as a strength, right? Because I did all of those things. And so I was able to even be kinder to myself about the meltdown because I could unpack it in this really important way. So I guess my message with the whole thing is consciously dissociating to me is a skill set, it's a strength, and we need to learn to use it when we need it, just like masking. That's what I have to say on that. I also have to say that it's a reminder that, you know, your autism is with you for life, that the meltdowns don't go anywhere, that when we leave ourselves depleted, they are inevitable, right? When we push our own trigger buttons, they are inevitable. Okay. And that is a lifelong, it's a lifelong thing. It's just how our system responds to overload, right? And understanding that is really our key, right? To keeping them to a minimum. Like obviously we'll never escape them, but understanding them, understanding our triggers, understanding what happens during a meltdown, why it happens, right? All of that stuff doesn't keep them away, but it helps to keep them at a minimum, right? When we balance our spoons, when we balance our time, which is why we're doing time and spoon management, right? Because when we keep that balance right for ourselves, right, we get to keep those things at a minimum. Are they avoidable? Sometimes. A lot of the time, things build up, and those things that continue to build up, or the last straw, is not something that is in your control. And so what we have to do is take care of our spoons and take care of our time and choose wisely and carefully, right? And know that we're sometimes, because we're adults out in the world with responsibilities, right? Sometimes they're going to happen. And when they do, it's about using the tools that we know work to keep us grounded, to keep us safe, to keep us processing, right? And to not allow ourselves to become the victims of our own meltdowns, right? To understand they are a natural part of our cycle, that whole dilly-o, right? Okay. So those are really my lessons from this whole thing. And I feel like it took less of a toll, and I felt less of the guilt and shame because I was able to sort of know what was happening, right? And sort of say, this is happening. It's, it's inevitable. And I also was aware as I was going into the day that I was entering into it in this really depleted state. And that depleted state, was an awareness that it may be coming, right? And I had to do what I had to do to take care of myself. And I'm really sort of proud of the way that I handled it. I'm not happy that I had a meltdown. Nobody's happy to have a meltdown, silent or otherwise. Nobody enjoys it. Nobody who has to witness it. Nobody who participates in it. Nobody. There's nothing fun or good about it, right? But learning how to get up well from them is the goal. And I think for the first time in my life, I feel like I got up well from it. Was I exhausted on Tuesday? Sure as shit. Couldn't do much for myself. Couldn't even meal plan for myself on Tuesday. Okay. I had to message Antonio at 2 p.m. because I hadn't eaten anything all day because I couldn't get myself together to figure out what I could actually make and eat. And so I sat not eating anything until 2 o'clock when Antonio was like, here's what you're going to do. Go do this. Right. And so, did I pay for the whole process? Yes. Right. What did I? Yes. But did I pay less than usual? Yes. And it was the self-kindness was the piece, right? And knowing that feels like there's nothing I can do about a meltdown when it's happening, but I can let the process occur without fighting it. And when I allow it to happen without fighting it, and I sort of roll with the tools that I know help me cope with it, it feels different, right? I imagine it like I've had seizures, but I don't remember them. And so it imagines how I feel if someone has epilepsy and they have a seizure. They know it's coming. They know what they're going to feel like after. There's not a damn thing that they can do about it, right? And they can do things their best to prevent as many as possible, but they're inevitable, right? And it's that really similar feeling of just not having that control in that moment. And if there's something that I can do about letting it just happen, right, and getting through it well, then that's really the lesson. That's the thing to learn about it all, right? And I think that's the piece I'm going to take away from the whole thing, right? And now I know better, and I can do better, and all of those things, all of the lessons we talk about all the time, right? I think we need to start thinking more about these habitual coping skills that we have and how we can use them as tools instead of as bad habits, if that makes sense. So I'm thinking about all of those pieces, and I hope you guys are sort of engaged in this whole thing, because I've been talking for a really long time without looking at chat. And so I'm going to go look over there now in case I sound like a crazy person. Let's see. Although people think I'm in a sulk and then judge differently. So sorry you went through this. Yeah. So, right. So when we do it silently, people still judge if they're aware enough, or if we're not able to escape the scenario fast enough, I think. And so there's judgment with adult meltdowns. And it's not something that we have total control over, because we can't always control our environment. We can't always control our spoons and our time and all of those things. And being real about it is part of the process, right? Being real that it was a full setup for a meltdown. I mean, if I escaped that day without a meltdown, I would have been like shocked that had happened, right? And the fact that I had one is one thing. The fact that I was able to reach out to my support system mid meltdown and just explain, and that my support system understands what that means enough to say, go do this or do that, right? And it was a good suggestion, not a bad suggestion. Like, don't worry, it's fine, right? Nothing like that. I didn't get blown off. And then I did the things that I know are wins for me. I spent time with my pets. I spent time outside in the fresh air. I sat down and eliminated the overloads and calms myself down, right? And figuring that piece out for myself and knowing that when I felt the dissociation, it wasn't time to be afraid that it was happening, but instead to say, oh, yes, thank you, life preserver, right? And I needed that life preserver and I used it. And so, like, wow, right? So that was my whole process. And that's why I decided to talk about it today, because it was this really, it was very recent and it was, and so very clear in my mind, but also I had processed it differently and taken sort of mental notes as it was happening because I wanted to do it better. I knew it was coming and I wanted to do it better this time. And the piece that feels better about it is that I didn't allow myself to judge myself about it. I didn't allow in too much guilt and shame. Of course, it was there, but I tried to keep it at a limit, right? Because that's really where I pay another time for the meltdown, right? I pay for it as I know it's coming. I pay for it in the moment. And then I pay a third time, right, when I beat myself up with the guilt and shame over the whole thing. So I sort of was able to, cut out some of the damage that's usually done, right? And get up a little faster and get up better and all of those things. So that's why I share this shit with you guys, because there's lessons in here for us. There's ways that we can do it better. It's not about getting rid of these things, but how can we do them better? So I hope that you guys found it interesting. Let's see. It sounds like you were super conscious and you really helped. I think so, right? I think, Joe. And that was the win, right? It was like, it's happening. It's going to have to roll out. I am aware that it's happening. What can I do to speed along the process? What can I do to help myself get up faster? What can I do, right? It wasn't about saying, no, don't allow myself to have this meltdown. And that was where the switch happened, right? That's where it processed differently. Bill said, you're really helping me to take inventory of my toolbox with this episode. Awesome, right? Because that's the piece. When we start looking at those poor coping mechanisms, instead of doing them as knee-jerk reactions, but pulling them in when we consciously need them, they become a tool instead of a habitual knee-jerk response. And that's different, right? We get to use them instead of letting them happen to us. And that's a different setup. And so I hope you guys have learned a little something from my little talk here for 32 minutes. I'm a crazy person about my meltdown this week, but I wanted people to kind of understand it. I want us to know that we do have tools in our toolbox for them. We just call them different things. And how do we call them in when we need them, right? I got to say really quickly before I go, look at this. I know you guys, Joe, hang on to your seat. I don't know, where is the... Oh, it's on the outside. So this was the little brown box from Joe, you guys. I'm going to really quickly show it to you because I cannot wait another time. So it literally came wrapped, this brown box came wrapped in this lovely package of brown paper. And the only clue that I had, right, was down here on the little ticky. And then I saw that it came from Joe and I thought, I'm not expecting anything from her. How strange, right? And inside I got this lovely card that is personal and I'm not sharing because it's my special thing with Joe. But then she sent me everything that she sent was wrapped in this adorable, perfectly matched tissue paper, right? And then really pretty green ribbon, shiny green ribbon, okay? Matching, and all these little packages. And she sent me the best stuff ever, okay? So here's some of the stuff she sent me. Remindfuls. They're little tools, right? They're little cards in here that tell you amazing things about yourself when you need to hear it. What? Right? And so here's one. Listen to the voice that says, yay me, and amplify it as loud as you can. Oh my God, right? So that's like all of these little cards are in here when you need them. I need them all the time because I'm by myself all the time. So that was perfect, right? She sent me green nail polish, right? And we all know how I feel about that. I don't even think I need to discuss that out loud, right? She sent me what I believe to be, I love candy from other places because it's so interesting to me that the candies almost all taste the same from different places. It's not that they've created a new candy. It's that the way they package and sell things and call things in different countries is amazing to me. So this is what we call lifesavers here in the United States. They're just circles and they can be in mint flavored or fruit flavored or whatever. And they come in a big roll. And this is a 4-roll pack. And I think we sell 4-roll packs, but our packs our little rolls are about this much shorter than your rolls. Our rolls are like tiny. So this is like a double-sized lifesaver roll to me. And I love learning. I haven't tasted them yet, but I'm assuming that they're going to taste like lifesavers, like the mint flavored ones. So I'm excited to try that and find out if they are similar. And then like, what's with it? What do you guys eat that many more than we do that you need longer rolls? They feel slightly bigger too. I mean, do we just like not eat enough of them here in this? I don't know. But in any case, I find that this is going to be an experiment. And I love this shit. It makes me so happy. I love when I learn things about candy in other countries. I don't know why. I don't know where they came from. And then she sent me this adorable pin rather, that I don't know if we can you guys see it? Sort of. Oh, there we go. And it says negative thoughts eraser. And it's like a little spray bottle. And yes, exactly. Right. In the middle of that meltdown, right? Because that's what was happening. It was the negative thoughts kicked in. Right. So like, girl, we all need one of these is what I'm saying. Right. And then this, I saved it for last and my favorite. So you guys know the little pink one up there. That's Joe, the cat that I bought from Joe because I love her little characters. They have so much personality to me and I love them so much. So she made me one and sent it. How much do we love this guy? I want him to like live on my shoulder right here. So I'd be like, yo, bud, blah, 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 blah. And talk to him all day. I love him so much. I don't even know. Like and he doesn't have a name yet. I've been thinking about naming him Void. I kind of like that. So I can shout into the void if I need to. So I think that's going to be his name, Joe. Because that's what I do for a living is shout out into the void. And so this is Void. And when I'm done here, he will be living next to Joe up there. And I just need to express my gratitude for this, Joe, because this made my day that day. When I found it, when I opened it, when I showed everything to Antonio, when I talked about it on gratitude, and when I talked about it again just now, that's how much joy was created and shared by this little box of things, right? So thank you, Joe. Thank you for creating joy, for sharing the joy, right? And for seeking it out in the first place to decide to create the box. Because I have to imagine, in order for all this joy to get all the way across the ocean to me, a whole bunch of joy had to go in the box, right? And so that's how I see the whole thing. And it gives me goosebumps to think about it, right? And that's why I say to you guys, seek joy, create joy, and share joy. All of the joys. Because look at it, right? So great. Oh, good. I'm glad you love the name, Joe. I think Void is perfect for him. And so that is going to be his name. So that I can shout into him vigorously. So thank you so much for all of that joy. I am so grateful for it because talk about needing it this week. Man, did I need it. Right? So thank you for that, Joe, so much. Thank you to you guys for joining me today on live stream, which is a very long episode, actually, of Being Becca Live. Thank you to those who have already registered for Time and Spoon Management. I will see you in an hour and a half or so. And to those of you who have not yet registered for Time and Spoon Management, you still have time. So head over to beccalaurie.com. Where you can check out everything that I do, including the course, and of course, get yourself registered for the seminar on the Self-Defined Living Seminars tab. Scroll down to the bottom to October and go ahead and get yourself registered. You can also find all my writing there, connect to all my social media. You can also contact me through my contact page or go to the Redbubble store and go get yourself one of these jammies, which this is one of my favorite ones that I designed. Perfectly imperfect, right? And I love it so much. So yay. Thank you to all of you guys for joining me today. I will be back here, of course, on Sunday with Growing Gratitude. And then I'll be back next Wednesday for the next Being Back Alive. I hope you guys will take some time to share the stuff that I do, to subscribe to the channel, because that means a ton to me. Your thumbs up are extremely helpful in knowing what stuff you like and don't like on here. And of course, anytime that I hear from you guys, wherever I see the comments, so wherever you're watching it, feel free to comment because I see all the comments. And those mean a ton, of course, as well as your direct emails or your messages. I just love being in touch with you guys. So please just give me some feedback. And of course, let me know if there's a topic you think I should be talking about that I haven't talked about yet. And with that, I guess that's it for Being Back Alive today. I will see you guys on Wednesday. And just like Joe did, man, get out there and seek joy, share joy. Seek joy, create joy, and share the joy, because then all the joys happen, right? And we all need more joy. With that, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you out and about on the interwebs. Bye.